But of course, the flower children hadn't completely taken over. Here's a guy who's neither grateful nor dead.
If Alberta and Saskatchewan leave, this country is over. It will cease to exist. It will be swallowed whole.
What happens to the rest of Canada?
They become the 51st state. They're done. Or the 23rd province of China. This is basically what you have at this point. My whole goal behind Alberta independence is make the federal government obsolete. We don't need the federal government. They've proven to be fiscally mismanaging our money. They're irresponsible. They don't know what they're doing. If you watch Question Period, it's enough to drive you insane. So what I would like to see happen is Alberta separates, Saskatchewan separates. They'll probably become one. I can see them becoming one. But then what will happen is you have your have and your have-not provinces in this country.
Oh, how I only wish that Saskatchewan and Alberta become one, and then they decide to join the United States. I'm going camping there as soon as it happens, okay? I'm going to go up there. I hate the cold. I'm going up there in the cold, and I'm going to support the people of the 51st state of the United States. Welcome back, everybody, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. We're going way in the breach. Monday, I know. Usually it's Sunday. You know, hey, Joe and I got things going on. Sorry about that, but we're going live nonetheless. You guys, great. Please remember, wherever you're watching this, across social media, help us out. Like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Joe, what is it with the snakes?
Dude, that's crazy, dude.
I mean, and there's people, that looked like an older clip. Did you catch the guy with the ruffles in the tuxedo vest, right?
Dude, I love that. That's a good
clip.
Look.
But there's still people who just this is the problem with sola scriptura. This is a problem with just reading the Bible and thinking you know it all, because the Bible says you could get bit by a snake. It's nothing going to happen to you. Yeah, you want to go out and you want to go test that theory?
Joe, all you got to do is believe, Joe.
Well, that's right. If I have faith, that snake's not going to hurt me. It's unbelievable. And yeah, the guy at the Dead concert, that's fantastic. I mean, just busting out the brown liquor and smoking a cigarette. I mean, not now, but in another life, that was me. I was like, I don't care if you allow it to happen. Yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing. I don't care how many cameras are on me. Joe Rossinello, the world is going crazy. I need a comment.
Gosh,
because I, quite frankly, and we're going to discuss it in this conversation here at the front line with Joe and Joe, I don't know right now. I don't have a coherent decision that I made on whether or not doing what we did in Iran was right, was wrong. I have some thoughts, but I need your help. What do you think about what's going on this week?
Well, let's start off. We got the clip with Trump. Let's start off with his announcement. He's got his headgear on, the America First crazy MAGA hat. He must have just got out of bed. Then again, I think he's a vampire. The man doesn't sleep. But let's start off with that, and then we can take it from there.
All right, here we go. Here's Trump on Iran. This is from a couple days ago.
Members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, the armed forces, and all of the police, I say tonight that you must lay down your weapons and have complete immunity, or in the alternative, face certain death. So, lay down your arms, you will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death. Finally, to the great proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action. Do not let it pass. May God bless the brave men and women of America's armed forces. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless you all. Thank you.
Now, here's my question. There's so many different ways we could go, and I'm sure we're going to get into it. We have, what's his name? John Kiriakou. I think that's how you pronounce his name.
He's real good.
He's real good. He was in prison. That'll smarten you up. Michael knows. Well, here's my take. okay? And I'm going to take a bit of a more of an historical take, Joe Rossinello, and I'm going to throw it over to you, okay? You know, the Ayatollah Khomeini back in 1978, 1979 didn't come into power in a vacuum, okay? That was an overthrow, not just of the Shah, that was an overthrow of Western materialism. They didn't want the people I'm talking about. They didn't want Western materialism. That's like saying, well, America's got your back, but these are people, let's face it, whether they're conservative Muslim or conservative Christian, they don't want many of what we call Western values. They don't want our abortion. They don't want our gay marriage. They don't want a lot of this stuff. And they certainly don't want rabid consumerism because that's obviously materialism, okay? That overthrow of the Shah was a rebellion, an overthrow of the Western materialist ideology or philosophy. Okay, what makes people think that all of a sudden, after a couple generations, you think because they might fill the vacuum that's been created now now that the Ayatollah is dead and the higher leadership is dead? What do you think? You think that they're going to embrace these so-called American values that you claim to say that we cherish so much? We have problems with those same issues in the United States. That's one of the reasons why we do this show. We have a problem with abortion. We have a problem with homosexuality. We have a problem with transgenderism, okay? They're not going to embrace the liberal American mindset in the name of they're going to turn to the West somehow. No, these people, I'm not saying that they necessarily, we know how brutal the regime that just got taken out has been and could be. But what makes them think that all of a sudden they're going to embrace all the nonsense that Joe and many people out there are fighting against here at home? Do you know where I'm going with that, Joe?
Well, I think, to be honest, clearly Islamic states are not for those things. I mean, Saudi Arabia is not for those things, but there's a big difference between Saudi Arabia and Iran. From what I've seen, and I've listened to a number of commentaries since this kind of debacle went down, I have heard 80% of the people are against those who run the government. So it's an 80-20 rule right now. That's what Trump's play is. Trump's play is cut off the head and hope that the powers that be, i.e. the police, basically seize control and then a new government is put in. It's a regime change event. It's a huge risk because there's a lot of things at play here. It's not just Israel and Iran, United States and Iran. And from Iran's perspective, they view us the same. We're interchangeable. How I know that is overnight, 10 different countries were hit across the Middle East by Iran. Anything with any semblance of an American institution, entity, business was bombed. So that opens up a can of worms. Another layer to this, the folks in Iran are Shia Muslims. There's two groups. Again, I'm not going to make myself out to be an expert on this, but this is just, again, what I read. There are obviously two groups, the Sunnis and the Shia Muslims. A lot of people, so there's 1.8 billion Muslims in the world. We'll cut it in half. 900 are Shia, 900 are Sunni, roughly. Again, I'm not an expert. The guy we killed was the head of the Shia sect of Muslims in the entire world. So that's equivalent to someone killing like the Pope. That's their Pope.
Right.
So you've just opened. Now, even if it's 80-20 politically, there are Muslims in countries all over the world that look to that dude. That's going to open another can of worms. Will there be an internal revolution because they just bombed all these other countries within the Muslim world, Shia versus Sunni, fighting for supremacy of Iran and or fighting in general? I mean, there's that aspect. Also, us, as in the United States and Israel, taking out such a figure. Dude, God knows how many terrorist cells are in the United States right now. For 4 years, we had an open border.
Right.
How many radical Shia Muslims are in the United States, are in Europe. Since this event has taken place, there was a shooting in a nightclub in Austin, Texas, where 3 people died, maybe more. No play on the mainstream media. And there was 13 people killed at a Riverside Fest, whatever that is, in Cincinnati. No play on social media. So how does this open us up to potential danger? I think it does, because he was such a significant figure in the Muslim world. Now let's talk about economics. Another strategy that it seems that Iran is doing is they're bombing economic hotspots. The Strait of Hormuz has been shut down. 20% of the global oil for the entire world goes through there. That affects China. Also, they've bombed oil refineries in Saudi Arabia. That affects the global price of oil. We may not need it, but others do, which means others could get involved, because where money talks, people listen and people get involved. And that is another play that Iran is doing right now.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a lot to this, and Trump took a huge risk, and that's kind of Mike Knowles' angle. I thought it was an interesting point. We're going to play that clip. Dude, he risked his entire presidency. Now, let's say he wins the bet, meaning there is a regime change because of this, because of the 80-20. Trump is a legend in the Middle East. They'll be singing songs about the man for 100 years in Israel, in Iran, for hundreds of years. But if it doesn't work that way, and because once you open a war, you don't know where it's going to go. It could turn out to be a disaster, a world war. That's possible. That's on the plate. Keep this in mind. If he loses the midterms, they are immediately going to try to get him out. They're going to, impeach him, because he didn't
do it
go
again?
through Congress. That is a fact. So this man gambled his entire presidency on this in many ways. It's a huge risk. Does it pay off? We'll see.
We'll see. I mean, I'm going to tell you one thing. Anybody, I'm not a dumb guy. Neither are you. Anybody out there on social media or in the regular media, if you think that you know how this is going to turn out, you're lying. You don't know anything. You don't know anything. There are too many pieces to this puzzle. As you said, there's the economic piece. I mentioned the cultural piece. They're not going to embrace. Listen, what happens when you get the next iteration of Hillary Clinton? Let's say the people of Iran, okay, who tend, by the way, to be more conservative. What happens if the people of Iran, as a consequence of foreign aid from the United States, if you have a Hillary Clinton type person who says, well, you're going to have to liberalize your abortion laws. Well, you're going to have to liberalize your marriage laws, or else we're not going to give you that $3, $4, $5 billion. You see that happening. So you have the cultural aspect, you have the political aspect, you have the economic aspect. Anybody who tells you they know what's going to happen here is really full of crap. I always do. I respect the guy. I really like Michael Knowles because he's very well informed. Here's what he had to say.
If this goes south, President Trump is risking not only his foreign policy credibility, but perhaps his whole presidential legacy in precisely the way George W. Bush did. However, if this works, if the United States ousts the Ayatollah, who has been an enemy of the United States since the regime took power in 1979, if the United States succeeds in regime change in Iran and helps to bring about a more pro-Western and more popular regime there, this will be the greatest foreign policy accomplishment of any president in our lifetime since the end of the Cold War. All of that to say, we don't know what's going to happen, and anyone who tells you what's going to happen tomorrow or the day after in a war is lying to you or ignorant. However, the one thing we know with certainty is the stakes could not possibly be higher for the White House.
Well, that's why I'm kind of surprised that he actually made this move, because that has been from what I've heard my entire adult life, that was always like the reason why we didn't do this, even though Bibi Netanyahu has been calling for this for decades. All right. If you remember back in the 90s, Iran's 3 weeks away from enriching uranium. Okay. We heard it. Oh, it's like the climate hoax. I was like, all right, we heard it over and over again. The world's coming to an end in 3 weeks. 3 weeks comes and the world is still going. So it's like the United States government has been always hesitant to do this. Now Trump has, for the reasons that you said and Michael Knowles said, nobody knows what's going to happen. Okay, and yet here we are. Here we are, and Joe, I got to tell you, the one part of my heart is this: I understand the rationale, but I didn't vote for this. I did not vote for this. And this could turn out to be something that's going to be prolonged, no matter what they're trying to sell us right now. And if it's prolonged, it makes it even worse. We're, politically speaking, conservatives or anybody who would have supported our current regime here under Donald Trump, we're toast. The Democrats are going to win the midterms. And that's all they're going to need going into 2028 to say, well, Trump got us into a war that he promised he wasn't going to do. And that's a problem. That's a political problem.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't know if it's as cut and dry as that. And I also don't know if Trump wanted to do this. And I'm going to break this down a little bit. And I think the next opinion from a gentleman who was in the CIA, I think he nails it. A lot of Iranians in just about every Western nation are very happy about this. I saw clips from CNN on when they were trying to push the person in one direction to be anti-Trump, they literally stopped them short. Like, so I don't know how that is going to basically go down, because here's the deal. Iran was not a good player. Now, this does not justify necessarily that we have to take them out on the world stage. I don't think that could be debated. They were definitely not, like, I'd put them on par with North Korea. Like, they were repressive not only to their people, but many, many bad elements have come out of Iran that have hurt the West. I don't think that's debatable. I don't even think that's a political conversation. The conversation is, should we have gone in there? Now, I don't think necessarily Trump wanted to. What I do think happened is Israel made it absolutely clear to Trump that they're going to do it. And because they're going to do it, the ripple effect could have bled into American interests. Now, I'm not in those meetings. I can't give you like specifics. And this is what the gentleman from the CIA, which we're going to talk about, I think talks about that in a little bit more greater detail than I'm articulating it. But I do think that Israel, based on that, what was it, the 12-day war, were absolutely intent on starting a conflict with Iran, which would have bled into interests that America had in the region. Stability. We have bases. We have people. Oil prices. So maybe Trump, again, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, said maybe we could cut off the head and it could be quick and it could avoid a larger conflict if we don't do anything. You see, I don't know if I didn't vote for this either. I don't want war. We get into too many things, and frankly, many times we come up with nothing. Iraq was a total bust. We got nothing out of it except, frankly, dead Americans, wounded Americans, people who have like issues in their head. They're on the street. They're committing suicide. These are veterans, and we paid trillions of dollars out of our coffers. We got nothing out of it. With regard to this, I don't know if you could take a purist view, and many people are. I didn't vote for this. Well, neither did I. But I don't sit in Trump's seat. And I'm not carrying his water. All I'm saying is it's a lot more complicated than just saying I didn't vote for this. Because right. I will say this, though. A driving factor of conflict in the region has to do with Israel having a nuclear weapon. That is why Iran wants one. I don't think they have one. That is why they want one, to neutralize that basic threat to their nation. And that is a mistake that we made. We should have never allowed Israel. And yes, we do call that shot. We absolutely do call that shot. We should have never allowed that to happen, but we did.
Right. I mean, here's John Kiriakou.
though, I'm told, that Donald Trump decided to bomb Iran was that the Israelis said for the first time, if you don't bomb Iran to take out these deep bunkers, we're going to use nuclear weapons. And they had never threatened that before. And so Trump said, bombing Iran might actually save us from the start of World War III if it keeps the Israelis from using nuclear weapons.
So according to your source, the Israelis told the president of the United States that if he did not use the United States military power to bomb the nuclear facilities in Iran, Israel, acting on its own, would use nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Do you see why there's a problem with that statement, John?
Yeah.
Because they've never admitted that they've had them.
That's right.
So you're telling me that they just admitted to the president of the United States that they have nuclear weapons and we still do not have them in the IAEA treaty?
I mean, if Israeli nuclear whistleblowers are to be believed, yeah, they've had them. They started working on them in the 50s.
If any other country has a nuclear weapon and threatens to use it, and the president of the United States knows about it, okay, the president of the United States is going to act in every way he can to let them know you will not use a nuclear weapon. You will not create a nuclear or another world war, because that type of action, that there is no positive outcome to that. There is no more the Iranian people and what we're trying to do for them. That would be a blatant, as some of the criticism of Netanyahu goes, him acting as, who is it, Gideon, who's destroying Amalek, and he'll just wipe them all out. There's no way that Trump should, like, if that's the case, if what he's saying is true, how does the president of the United States doesn't grab Bibi Netanyahu and say, absolutely not. It's not going to happen, because if you go ahead and do that, you not only are you not our friend, you're now going to be our enemy, because that will create way too much instability in the world, because it's not just an attack with missiles. Now it's an attack with nuclear missiles. I want your comments on that. And yeah, what the kid said. I thought Israel didn't have nuclear weapons.
No, that's been established. I knew that to be honest, I knew that, because that they have a nuclear weapon. Israel has a nuclear weapon. They should never have been allowed to. Now, to your point, if someone says that, now you're going against our interest. In many respects, us having to go there, because Iran does not have a nuclear weapon right now. Don't let anyone tell you that they do. It's the same bullcrap story with Iraq. We are spending a ton of our taxpayer dollars in a war that, frankly, I think the money could be used much better in many other places in America. I didn't vote for that. However, again, it's very complicated. And I do think Israel was very serious. If not going to drop a nuclear bomb, they were absolutely intent on starting a war. And to Trump's, to his defense, maybe he saw this as, listen, I'm going to stop the bleeding before it becomes a flood. I don't know. I'm not carrying his water, though, because I'm not for this war. All I'm saying is the purists out there, and there are many of them. Many of them are very popular. I'm not going to name names, but they're going berserk. Like, I think sometimes you have to sit in a person's shoes and you have to hear everything. Ultimately, I think the trouble started with allowing Israel to have the weapon. I definitely don't want Iran to have a weapon, and I don't think they do have it at this particular time. But I will say this. Iran has what they have said verbally: death to America, death to Iran. I mean, death to Israel. Dude, they're a bad player on the world stage. Does this fix this? Potentially not. You know what I'm saying? This could turn out to be a bust. A bust.
Isn't it a bit funny though? Is that for all the war hawks going back to the 90s, George Bush, Rick Santorum, Lindsey Graham, the neocon establishment in the Republican Party, right? All the so-called conservatives. Donald Trump was supposed to be the anti that. In other words, keeping us out of war. No. Israel does not control the United States Congress. Okay. For 30 years, Netanyahu has wanted this. and he had and Pat Buchanan got in trouble when they were talking about Iraq. Pat Buchanan got in trouble when he was saying that the only people that are in favor of this action are Israel and their Amen corner in the United States Congress, and he was chastised for it in public. But wasn't he right? Wasn't he right? Donald Trump, who was supposed to keep us out of war, trying to convince us that no, the United States Congress is not owned by Israel. We make our own decisions. Well, guess what you did? You gave Bibi Netanyahu something he couldn't get for 30 years. You just handed it to him on a silver platter. And I don't, again, I agree with you that I'm not sitting in his shoes, but you said you weren't going to do this. And you just went ahead and did it. You just went ahead and did it. And like you said, Joe, it's too long a conversation. I know everybody out there listening to us at the front line with Joe and Joe, maybe we didn't give much insight because I don't think there's much to give. I think you could ask questions at this point is the best you could do. Because if you say, like Mike Knowles said, if you say that you have an answer to all this or you foresee the outcome, I think you're full of crap, because we're just going to have to see how this shakes out on a daily basis. Okay, but I know this, though. Americans have already been killed. American soldiers have already been killed.
And Trump actually said out of his own mouth, there will be more. He said that. And I could just speak for me. I have 3 sons. There is no way that I would be good with one of my kids being in the military. No way.
No.
Sorry.
No,
Call me whatever you want. There is no way that one of my sons is dying for these crazy nonsense ideologies and ideas. And here's another interesting thing, which did not get a lot of airtime, and I don't know if people caught it. This happened on the weekend. On Sunday, Trump signed, of course, got very little play because of the war, and I think he did this on purpose, an executive order to make cryptocurrency basically the hub of cryptocurrency. Again, I'm not an expert in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. I'm just telling people something that went under the radar. He did this on Sunday to make America the hub of crypto. They're pushing this. And this is my thoughts on this. They see where the dollar is going because we have too much debt. And they're trying to replace that to keep the edge, because right now the dollar is the dominant currency of the world. They see that, they see the end of that tunnel, and it scares them. So they're trying to create another area whereby America can lead the world, that it is crypto, and we are now the crypto capital of the world, and that is going to be the new currency. That was signed on Sunday. Why did he do that on Sunday after he started a war? Interesting. Something to think about. Not many people covered it. It was on X for just a couple of hours, and then it dropped. And no one in the mainstream media is talking about it. Some of the financial news, they're talking about it. But it's something to watch.
Well, so you're with us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello, weighing the breach. So obviously, you know, Trump gave his State of the Union last week, okay? And we hadn't commented on yet. Now, I got to say, though, in my heart, this is when I really like Trump.
Before I came along, we had the exact opposite. From trade to healthcare, from energy to immigration, everything was stolen and rigged in order to drain the wealth out of the productive, hardworking people who make our country great, who make our country run. Under Biden and his corrupt partners in Congress and beyond, it reached a breaking point with the Green New scam, open borders for everyone. They poured in by the millions and millions from prisons, from mental institutions. They were murderers, 11,888 murders. They came into our country. You allowed that to happen. And record-setting inflation that cost the typical family $34,000 in just a speck of time. Now the same people in this chamber who voted for those disasters suddenly used the word affordability, a word. They just used it. Somebody gave it to them, knowing full well that they caused and created the increased prices that all of our citizens had to endure. You caused that problem. You caused that problem. They knew their statements were a lie. They knew it. They knew their statements were a dirty, rotten lie. Their policies created the high prices. Our policies are rapidly ending them. We are doing really well. Those prices are plummeting downward. The price of eggs is down 60%, Madam Secretary. Thank you. The cost of chicken, butter, fruit, hotels, automobiles, rent is lower today than when I took office by a lot. And even beef, which was very high, is starting to come down significantly. Just hold on a little while. We're getting it down. And soon you will see numbers that few people would think were possible to achieve just a short time ago. Nobody can believe when they see the kind of numbers, and especially energy, when they see energy going down to numbers like that, they cannot believe it. It's like another big tax cut. I'm also confronting one of the biggest ripoffs of our times, the crushing cost of health care caused by you. Since the passage of...
Now, see, that's where I really like him. You know, they've thrown out, and we said here at the front line with Joe and Joe a million times, the Democrats threw out all semblance of civility and decorum a very, very, very long time ago. This stuff didn't happen with Donald Trump. Didn't even happen under Barack Obama. Obama is the one that escalated it. He was the most uncivil, uncharitable, lying person that ever sat in that chair. But it even goes back when you and I were in our 20s. During the 90s, I keep saying it all the time. If you want to see where this all started, go look at the way the Democrats treated Judge Robert Bork, the way they treated Clarence Thomas, the way they treated Sam Alito. Everything became political, and they could destroy you and your family. They're disgusting people. They didn't even stand for Irina Zarutska's mother and father. That woman needlessly died because a thug, yeah, that's the word, thug, all right, stabbed her in the neck. All right, a promising young woman, beautiful young woman, had to have her life ended like that. Her parents are invited to the State of the Union. The Democrats won't even take a stand for her. No, that's how disgusting they are. Trump is exactly right when he tells them it's your fault. And he called them disgusting. He says, you won't even stand for this. Calling them out is what needs to happen. If there's one thing that Trump does that I've been saying for a very long time Republicans need to do, the Democrats are down in the gutter, but they fight very well down there. If you want to beat them, you have to go down there with them and confront them there. Don't say, well, we have decorum and we have civility and we don't stoop. Stoop, damn it. Because they fight very well from down there. And if you don't get down there in the gutter with them, Trump is good at getting in the gutter with them. They punch him in the face. He punches back harder. That is something that he does when it comes to Democrats very, very well.
Regarding the State of the Union, and I listened to a number of commentaries on this as well. Trump crushed it. I heard a commentary from CBS News. He crushed it. Look at the metrics. He crushed it. It wasn't even a political discussion. It was common sense versus crazy. And he made his argument so well and articulated that so effectively to the American people. They have no policies other than I hate Donald Trump. Their policies, and we have said this time and time again, and this is the same model that the globalists have taken in Canada and in Europe. It's ideology over people. Ideology over people. You do not count. How do I know that you, as in the listener of this podcast, don't count? Because John Thune will not put the SAVE Act on the floor. John Thune has two constituents. We would think he has one. No, it's two. It's his donors and the American people. And the donors are more important because he needs money to get political ads to the American people to deceive them, or at least to throw them a bone that they could get distracted. And then he could do the bidding of the donor class. And it's not just him, it's all of them. This is the problem. You do not matter.
Joe, how is that vote not 100-0 in the Senate?
Joe, how is that not on the floor when it's 80%? 71% of Democrats want it. 90-something% of Republicans want it. It's an 80-20 rule. His latest lie, or it may not be a lie, he says, while we have the votes, we don't have the support of the people to put down the talking filibuster on the floor. Who cares, John? That would have been my conversation. If I was the president, I would have got on as soon as I saw that or him say that in a press conference. John, I don't care. Put it down. I don't care that you have the support of it. You have the power to do it. Do it. But his actions speak. His primary constituent is not the people. That is the problem in American politics. Our political system has been co-opted. This has been going on since Woodrow Wilson, 1913. This is the way it is. And here's how you fix it. You put limits on lobbying and you ban political advertising. Oh, that's too much. Why is it too much? We ban smoking advertising. It proves that it can be done. You ban it and you take the money factor out of it. And then John Thune will listen. Why else is John Thune not doing this? Because it's giving power back to people, which means he may lose his job.
Right.
And that is why they don't want to put it down. Murkowski in Alaska. Trump won by 13 points. And she still is not for it. Why? Because you might lose your job.
Right.
Job.
And if there's anybody that needs to lose their job, it's freaking Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins and the rest of them.
But this is my point. This is where people have to start connecting the dots and see the two constituency problems that we have in America. Our representatives, this is a layup, and this is the litmus test for the country. If this does not pass, write it off.
Right.
Don't even consider elections. Don't take it serious. I'm talking from the Congress to the Senate to the president. It's all a farce. Because these are basic controls that the American people want, and they refuse to vote on it. That's because the constituency that matters is the money constituency. And if you don't see that, and if you don't buy that, I'll be honest with you, we can't have a conversation because it's as clear as day.
There is no argument against the requirement under the law, under federal law, that you show an ID when you go and vote. It's very, very, very simple. I mean, there is no argument. They would be all in favor. Well, you know, children shouldn't be able to buy alcohol. They need to show ID. Good. So you're trying to tell me they need to show ID to buy a bottle of Johnny Walker Black, but they don't need to have ID to go and vote. Are you kidding me?
Well, Joe, that's the threat of why, and this is what Mike Lee has been saying, the senator from Utah who basically authored this legislation with the gentleman from Texas in the Congress. What he's saying is let them talk, because in doing so, they're putting the noose around their neck, because the American people are going to see the nonsense that's going to come out of their mouth when they say that you don't need to have an ID to vote. Meanwhile, the mayor of New York, when he was subcontracting people to snowplow, required identification from them. To plow the snow. This is a God-given right to vote, one of the most cherished things we could do in the nation. And you're saying that you don't have to prove that you're a citizen to do it. Wrong. Wrong.
Yeah.
And this is any person. that's going to stand in front of me and give me an argument, whether it's a senator or the street sweeper, is bought and sold and or has a political ideology that they follow like a religion.
Yeah.
They're devoid of any semblance of common sense. They cannot think clearly. There is no critical thinking, and they are clearly not objective.
No,
There's
listen,
no
you're
other way
absolutely
to
right.
put it.
No, no, that's the best way to put it. And in that angry way that you put it, okay, I just have to imagine. I just have to imagine in my mind our Canadian brothers and sisters and the level of their anger when they hear stuff like this.
Keeps telling Canadians he's going to spend less, but he keeps spending billions of dollars more. So Carney just released his main spending plan for the next year. It's formally called the main estimates, and here are the numbers. So Carney is going to be spending billions of dollars more in 2026-27, according to the main estimates. In fact, spending is going up by about $18 billion. That, folks, is not spending less. Interest charges on the debt are going to be costing taxpayers more than $1 billion every single week. Well, what's $1 billion? That's a brand new hospital that is not getting built every single week because that money is going to pay interest charges on the government credit card. All right, let's look at the federal bureaucracy in that main spending plan. So the cost of the bureaucracy is going to be going up about 5% more next year, according to these main estimates. And remember, folks, the cost of the federal bureaucracy has already ballooned 80% between 2015 and 2024. All right, next thing to look at is the cost of the consultants, the contractors, and the outsourcing. Well, guess what? That spending is going up again next year under Carney to about $26 billion. $26 billion the government is spending on consultants, outsourcing, and contractors. Okay? Gross. And remember, that spending has already more than doubled between 2015 and 2024. Okay, so
Carney promised the fastest growing economy in the G7. We have seen on the numbers this morning, GDP is in fact contracting. $4 billion contraction in the last quarter, 0.2%, and we have seen now 2 quarters out of the last 3 where we see a GDP contraction. And not only that, we are in fact the only G7 country that is seeing a contraction in the economy in the last quarter. We're seeing other peers in the G7 growing, in fact. And when you look at this contraction, what does that mean? For Canadians, it means there's no economic growth. There's less opportunities. It is no wonder that we see unemployment rising, and we have concentrations among the youth. Opportunities are decreasing for youth. There's hopelessness among youth. And this is also happening in the middle of an affordability crisis. We are seeing food inflation hitting record numbers. We see child poverty also hitting record numbers, where we see 1 in 5 children under the age of 6 living in poverty. And we're not only not improving, we're actually going backwards, because poverty amongst children has increased, has doubled from 20.
So I'd like to break it to her, okay, and then throw it over to you. Why do you think the Canadian economy is contracting? Because Mark Carney is there to do just that. We're going to play a clip in a minute from Pierre Poilievre. In other words, Carney is there because he's a globalist. He uses the climate hoax and other fear tactics to try to convince the Canadian people that he's doing a great job while they're getting poorer. And the numbers that we just showed in those last 2 clips, the numbers bear that out. His spending is going up. They're bringing in less money. The economy is contracting. And it's because Mark Carney's there to wreck the Canadian economy, because that's what the globalists want. That's what these globalist puppet masters are telling him to do. Why do we think these people are legitimate leaders who have our well-being at heart? They don't. They want our destruction. Whether it's America, Canada, Europe, why don't they understand there are people in the world? Mark Carney represents them, but many, many others. They don't like humanity. They don't value people. They value themselves. They consider themselves to be an accident of evolution. They just happen to be born in the right family or with enough smarts that they know how to control systems. And they want to impose that on everybody else and tell you there's nothing special about you. And if you die, that's what I want to happen to you. Get it through your head, Canada. Get it through your head, America. Get it through your head, Europeans. These people don't have your interests at heart. They want your destruction, you and your entire family. Why don't people understand that, Joe?
Because they don't want to. But even if they do, they're powerless, and I'm going to tell you why. Let's just look at the one stat that she just threw out. 1 in 5 children in a G20 nation are living in poverty. Think about that for a minute. This is Canada that at one time had a thriving middle class. 1 in 5 children are living in poverty in Canada. This happened in about a 10-year period. That gentleman before that woman talked about from 2015 to 2025, and he gave the numbers. The numbers speak for themselves. So why do they not care about that? And I'll tell you why. Follow the globalist playbook. It doesn't matter that the nationalists in your nation are not for this. Just bring in the votes across the border. That's the strategy. We just saw that play out in Spain. Spain, he legalizes 500,000 people to vote to keep him in power. So it doesn't matter what you care about, what you don't care about. We're just going to bring in the votes. It's a smokescreen of democracy. Oh, yes, there is a vote. But does the vote really matter? When you're bringing people in and you're giving them stuff to vote for you. And that is exactly why Mayor Mandani in New York City is talking about a budget deficit, because New York gave away the store and they don't have money. That's why the mayor, the governor of New Jersey is saying we have a deficit because we gave away the store to buy votes. That is the name of the game. So you don't matter, because if you don't, the louder we get and the more we disagree, the more they just open the border. Mm-hmm. And that's the strategy. We saw that as a result of Brexit. That's when their eyes were opened, because if they don't do that, it has to go by the barrel of a gun. It's either this pretend democracy model that the West has embraced, or it becomes full on through the barrel of a gun totalitarianism. The outcome is the same. Democracy is dead. It is dead. When you have numbers like that, and the people's voice cannot be heard in those who represent them, you cannot call yourself a democracy.
No, you can't. You're exactly right about that. You're exactly right. Now, here's the alternative, though. Now, see, that guy we played in that first clip, that Canadian guy talking about Alberta and Saskatchewan coming together, in other words, to becoming the 51st state. If I was the president of the United States, I would make that my main foreign policy objective. I would pour money into campaigns in those two provinces for them to leave. Because guess what? What do you always say? Money moves the dial. What do you think is going to happen in Ottawa if Alberta and Saskatchewan actually gain real traction and there was a real possibility that they could come together and then become the 51st state with all the oil that they produce in those two provinces and all the economic prosperity that could bring to them and to us, where we should say, you want what? Exercise a little bit of the Monroe Doctrine, okay? This is the Western Hemisphere. We should be able to exert our influence. If you care about the people, if the people of Alberta and Saskatchewan say, you know what? Tell you what, Mr. Carney, we're leaving. And and have a president of the United States turn around to Mr. Carney and say, if you attack them in any way using military force, you will now be an enemy. Ottawa will now be an enemy of the United States of America. Now, I know I'm talking out of my you-know-what, Joe. I know that. But you know what? I don't feel so ridiculous when I see some of the stuff that these so-called leaders do, because they're so extreme. I'm like, well, I would be extreme if I'm sitting in the Oval Office. What's Canada going to do to us? What are they going to do? And if you usher in China, you've now really become our enemy, because we're not going to allow China to be on our doorstep. Are you nuts? In other words, to fight against them like this. Here's Pierre Polyev. I'm going to throw this to Pierre Polyev, then right to you.
And the truth is, we wouldn't want to. Canada and the United States have built probably the greatest partnership any two countries have ever built in the history of the world. That partnership remains profoundly in the interests of both our peoples and both our countries. And it's important to distinguish between governments and people. Politicians come and go. People remain. The miner in Appalachia, the energy worker in Texas, the engineer in California, they do not wake up every day asking how they can stick it to the Canadians. That's just the reality. The American people are not our adversaries. In fact, survey results demonstrate that Americans overwhelmingly have a favorable view of Canada and consider our two nations to be friends. That goodwill, by the way, may be our most important strategic strength going into these talks. As President Kennedy said when he was addressing the Canadian Parliament, geography has made us neighbors. History has made us friends. Economics has made us partners. Necessity has made us allies. Those whom nature hath so joined together, let no man put asunder. That insight captures a reality deeper than any temporary dispute. Canada's prosperity and security are inseparable from a stable relationship with the United States. And that is why we should not declare a permanent rupture with our biggest customer and closest neighbor in favor of a strategic partnership for a new world order with Beijing, a regime.
What did he say that's wrong?
Everything he said was spot on.
Right. Now, I don't agree
Everything
with
he
Pierre
said was
Polyev
spot
on a
on.
lot of things. A lot of things I don't agree with Pierre Polyev. What he just said, but here's the flaw in what he's saying, or here's one of the things that he's assuming that you cannot assume when you're talking about Canada. Mark Carney and Trudeau before him and all the globalists that control them, they're not interested in a good relationship with the United States of America. They're not interested in what John F. Kennedy had to say about us being friends and partners and neighbors. They're not interested in that. They want global destruction. I hate to sound like Alex Jones and be as angry as Alex Jones, but these people are right. Alex Jones is right. Polyev is right. You're not dealing with people who are of goodwill. They're not interested in building up nations. They're interested in tearing them down because they want one world government. They've told us this. You just mentioned Brexit. They told the people of England, you cannot leave the EU because Europe is going to have one government, and that's going to be in Brussels. And then when we finish that, then we're going to move to other areas, and eventually it's all going to go up into one world government. Don't assume that Carney wants to be our friend. What's wrong with people, Joe?
Joe, to be honest with you, everything he said was spot on. But here's the ideological rift. Donald Trump is anti-globalism, pro-nationalism, and Mark Carney is pro-globalism, anti-nationalism. There is the rift, and it doesn't matter what the people of Canada want. Mark Carney's job is to sell you something and or distract you from the goal. And frankly, at this point, it's not even hidden anymore. It's so apparently obvious what he is doing, who he truly represents, and the end game. And the metrics that matter are the empty refrigerators of the Canadian people. The 1 in 5 children that are living in poverty. And it's still full steam ahead.
Right.
Full steam ahead.
Chairman Mao introduced his collectivization program, right, in China. and the first 5-year plan. And so he says, okay, we're going to do this. So over time, they came to him and basically, for an update after the first 5 years. And this is the way I heard the story. I'm paraphrasing it, of course. He said, well, how did it go? Well, about 5 or 7 million people died. He said, keep going. He said, keep going. And they kept going, like you said, full steam ahead with the second 5-year plan. They came to him again after that period. Well, we lost a lot. We lost a lot of people. He did it again. He tripled down. And after that 5 years, he says, well, maybe we're going to have to rethink this. Because not only didn't it work, and that was only the first 10 or 15 million of the 50 million that Mao took out. Why, when we have these examples from history, why? Because Carney wears a suit? Because Xi Jinping wears a suit? Because any of these people, what? Because they wear nice suits, they look a little bit more sophisticated. Carney can't be a globalist communist because he's in banking. What does that mean? Armand Hammer, one of the greatest American industrialists, remember Armand Hammer baking soda? The guy he was one of Stalin's useful idiots. He was a communist. So what do you mean? Because people have a lot of money? In fact, one of the prerequisites for being a communist leader is that you're going to make a lot of money. We saw that with Black Lives Matter. We don't have to even look at Mao or Castro or any of these other people. So the bottom line is, I just, for the life of me, I don't understand, how people, like you said, what are they selling you? Now, leaving aside the rigged elections and all that, let's say it's a straight up vote. Anybody who would actually go vote for that, if you're a working class Canadian, what could he possibly be selling you when your refrigerator is empty and when you're broke? What is it that he's saying to you that he's doing about that you're actually paying attention to and believing what he said? I'm not saying you got to believe the right. I'm not even saying you got to I'm not saying you have to believe Pierre Poilievre. But what is he saying to you that's prompting you to vote for him? I don't get it. And what did Trudeau say to you that made you vote for him? These are oppressive dictators. They're not presidents of an industrial Western nation. They're oppressive dictators. They just wear suits and they do things a little bit more subtly. But they're just as oppressive as anybody in China or in the Soviet Union was, or anybody else. I don't want to hear it anymore, Joe.
Joe, I'll be honest, how the human mind can work and basically self-rationalize suffering away is mind-boggling. And that is a lot of what you see. Some of it has to do with a lack of education. Our public institutions, our public schools are not educating our people properly. That's a problem. Number two, our news agencies, particularly the mainstream news. And that's what most people listen to. They're not informing people the way they should be. And lastly, a lot of our people are unmoored. Much more unmoored than we were, say, 50 years ago. And I'm not talking about a theocracy here, people. What I'm talking about is family structures have broken down. People look to ideologies as a new form of religion, and they can't go against their own religion. Even if it works against their own economic interests, they're willing to buy the lie of the mainstream media. And that's what's happening.
Yeah.
In many, many segments of both Canada and America.
But Joe,
how is that them to lie to us?
But Joe, but wanting them to lie to us, like I said, I'm only talking about, okay, but then what's going through your head when you open the fridge and it's not even half full?
They rationalize it away.
But when you're hungry?
No, but yes, but what they'll say is, I've seen this in America. The corporations are gouging us. It has nothing to do with the supply chain problem as a result of a lack of fuel. The corporations are the problem, so tax them. So then the communists come in, i.e. the gentleman in New York, and he wants to raise property taxes by 9.5% because he's not getting what he wants from the governor. So what happens? The corporations leave the city, and then the jobs leave the city. And who suffers? You. But they believe the lie because they want to believe the lie because it's their religion.
Right.
And that is the underlying problem of it all, is an unmoored people. People who are not grounded in anything that's substantive. Their families are fractured. They don't believe in anything outside of what they see materially. And they have hooked their life into something that works against their own interests, and they refuse to turn on it because they refuse to change.
Right.
And to change would mean that they would have to look at what they have moored their life to as it is, and they refuse to do that.
Well, listen, we're gonna play a clip because underlying it all, we have our buddy Carabene in the chat room. So it doesn't sound like Bobby, our friend, is too happy with the religion. But I will correct you on one thing, and I heard this from a very learned man. If you go to the Encyclopedia of War and you look at the amount of what percentage of deaths in war occurred for purely wars of religion, it's less than 1%. Now, I'm not saying that religious people haven't done some pretty unreligious things in human history. I'm not trying to suggest that. But when you look at the forces of anti-religion, and that's who we talk about, whether you're talking about Carney, Mao Zedong, Stalin, or any of that horrid crew going back to the French Revolution, they've killed more people in 2 centuries, okay? Infinitely more. Maybe infinite's not the right word. Vastly more than any particular religion ever did. The anti-religionist, the atheist, the secularist, the Stalins, the Lenins, who was not a good guy, Mao, Castro, you lump them all up in just two. What the French revolutionaries did, their first target, Bob, was always number one, the Catholic Church, or in the case of Russia, the Orthodox Church. And number two, they just killed you. And they piled up millions and millions of bodies. The most evil person in any church, in any religion, in all of human history couldn't imagine wreaking the kind of havoc that the anti-religionist, the atheist, and the secularist did. And guess what? The reason why I'm going there, Bob, all right, because we love you to death and we love the fact that you support the show. I'm not just saying that, okay? Because the target is always on the back of the church. Listen to this.
Currently in Montreal at Villemort, Côte-Saint-Paul, and behind me you can see another church have burned down overnight. The old St. Paul Church have set ablaze, and a call was received by the firefighters around 2 a.m. overnight. And next to it, it's an old Presbyterian that was actually converted for a senior home. Everybody have been evacuated, as well as the neighborhood. Nobody have been injured. So what we know so far is like that in Canada, more than 100 of church have been either burned down or vandalized. There is literally an attack on Christianity. And we want to know what is the cause of this one.
So, I mean, listen, she said it right. I don't know the exact number. You might know it. The way that the church in Canada has been attacked, same way in Europe. Okay. What did the church all of a sudden forget how to put out fires? Okay. Or they forgot safety protocols? No, these are deliberate acts against the church. And why? And Bob, I say this with respect to you, because I understand people have abused. Joe and Joe know that people have abused religion in history, and we understand how people can get turned off by organized religion. You know, we're Catholic, okay, unabashedly so, okay. But here's my thing, and we'll keep it with the Christian, overall Christian category of religion. Joe, the reason why is because when you're an authentic Christian, you have one king. And it ain't the guy sitting in your state capitol. Whether it's your president, your king, your dictator, you have one king, and that's Jesus Christ. That's why Christianity is so under attack, because my loyalty is not to Donald Trump. My loyalty is not to a political party. When it comes to the Soviet Union, they forced you into loyalty, because if you weren't loyal to the revolution, they sent you away. They sent you to Siberia. Castro did the same thing in Cuba. They hate Christianity because Christianity says a Christian, and we've seen this with the martyrs in all of history. They've told the emperors, princes, kings, dictators, and everybody in between, my king is Jesus Christ, and you could cut my throat if you want, but I'm not going to back down to you. And that's exactly what they did, and that's why they're saints in heaven. And most of those rulers, if they didn't repent, all of those rulers are all roasting in hell, because we have one king. That's why they hate Christianity. That's my rant, Joe.
Mark Carney, and I'm not blaming that fire, which just happened recently. For those who are listening in America, that fire just happened a week ago, and it's one of many in Canada. Mark Carney, and I'm not blaming him for that, but what I am saying is Mark Carney recently just made comments saying that Canada was not founded upon Christianity. And that is categorically incorrect. If you ever drive, which I have, from Montreal to Quebec City, every single one of the exits, just about every single one, is named after a saint. The first archdiocese in the Americas was in Quebec. Bishop Laval was the bishop of Quebec City, all the way down to Florida, the first Catholic diocese in North America. Canada absolutely was founded upon Christian ideas. Same with America. It cannot even be disputed. So now let's step back and look at when Canada was thriving versus now when it's not. Under Christian ideas, the family was stronger in Canada, the middle class was stronger in Canada, and you had less turmoil in Canada. You had less crime in Canada. You were not permitted to kill yourselves when you're depressed in Canada. You had a lack of drug issues in Canada. Was it perfect? Of course it isn't and never will be. Was it better? Yes or no? The answer is unequivocally yes. It was better.
Right.
The same with America. We have forgotten who we are as a people, both Canada and America. Both countries were founded by Christian principles. And we have to return to them.
Joe, let's be more specific. Canada was formed by Catholic principles.
Well, the eastern part was. I can't speak for all of Canada. I could say the French-speaking part of Canada. I don't know. I'm not a historian.
No, I know, but I'm saying, but the original missionaries that went to northern United States, northern New York, the Michigan area, all that area, and then obviously went over into Canada. They were all Catholic missionaries.
100%.
Right, and Quebec was obviously founded, as you said,
100%.
it was Catholic. It operated on Catholic principles. Okay, people always want to talk about Native Americans. Nobody realized that Sitting Bull was converted by the Jesuits. When you see pictures of Sitting Bull, he's got all those things around his neck. He's got a big cross right in the middle. Okay, because he was preaching Squanto that we always heard about. Squanto was a baptized Catholic.
What about Elizabeth Warren?
What's that?
What about Elizabeth Warren?
She's something. She's something, but she ain't Catholic. But the thing is this: if people actually started to realize why things are going off the rails, okay. And again, part of this show is that we don't know if we have any recourse. We have people we vote for. They won't vote for election integrity in the United States. I certainly, obviously believe that Canada has rigged elections. So I think the elections are rigged all over the world.
Well, Joe, even if they're not rigged, when you bring people in and give them stuff to vote for you, that's a form of corruption. They still say that was always the big thing. They'll say there is no cheating. Well, when you open the border and you allow 20 million people to come into your country, you let them stay in hotels in New York City, and you give them stuff so they can vote for you. Now they're actually saying it out loud, some states in the United States. That's cheating.
That's cheating.
That's manipulation.
Right.
And this is where, again, it's not a representative democracy. Oh, but we're not a democracy. We're a republic, a constitutional republic. Yes, that's true. But here's another element of that. Private morality bleeds into public morality.
Yes, it
and
does.
the founders of the country have said this very clearly, i.e., the people who started America. You cannot have a constitutional republic without a strong public morality, and we don't have that.
Nope, we don't. And by the way, just as one personal note, my Uncle Joe, this is my mother's side, okay? When they left Italy, my mom stayed in Italy. Her elder siblings, my Uncle Joe, my Uncle Benny, my Aunt Geraldine with her husband, my Uncle Tony, they went from Italy to Belgium. My Uncle Joe brought them to Belgium because that's where there was work. They went from Belgium to Niagara Falls, okay? And they all got jobs at Ford. They all got good paying union jobs at the Ford plant in Niagara. I don't know if it was in Niagara Falls, but one of the Canadian Ford plants. They all owned their homes. My Uncle Tony eventually opened a luncheonette, like a little breakfast restaurant, breakfast and lunch place, okay? And they did well in Canada. Those people could not go to Canada from Italy now and get a job making $10 an hour, probably. And that's because of people like Trudeau and Carney, because of the way they use environmentalism, which is a hoax. They use it as a cudgel to beat people over the head to say, if you're not good, you're going to be responsible for little African babies burning on the Serengeti because you don't care about climate change. So not only don't you care about the planet, you're a racist too. That's the type of crap they try to sell people. It's a shame because I went up to Canada 1,000,000 times in my life. I saw a vibrant middle class, even as a little kid and a teenager up in Canada. You don't get that anymore. You're not getting that anymore. No way.
That's just, to be honest with you, the straight up and down truth. And that's where people have to connect the dots. They have to connect the dots and they have to unite. You see, the true battle is not the Democrat versus the Republican, because they're both in this cahoots against you. They're both working against you. You see, when both groups of people in the room find and see in that same room who the true enemy is. Yes, we have disagreements. There's many disagreements, but that is what the press is fueling. There's a common enemy, and that common enemy are the globalists. The globalists are the enemy of the people. They are destroying the middle class and have destroyed it in Canada. They have destroyed it in Europe, and they have gutted the flyover country in America.
Yeah.
And that is now happening on the coasts. That's the enemy.
No, listen, but remember, they have, it's a very intricate web, and the way, they try to influence the way people think through obviously the media, through the advertising industry, through Hollywood, through music. Unfortunately, as Catholics, a lot of those same radicals over the last 100 years, they've entered into the church. We've talked about that at the front line with Joe and Joe. Go look up Bella Dodd. She was a communist operative. She was the head of the CPNY, I believe, the Communist Party in New York. Then she was head of the CPUSA. She testified in front of the House Un-American Activities Committee that she sent over 1,000 communist operatives into Catholic seminaries. So they've woven a web. But here's the thing, on the political level, because again, Joe, going back to what you say about controlling money, when is somebody going to demand from the universities, okay, that they have a more balanced faculty within each respective department? So that because that's one of the things that liberals and the left were great at. They took over the universities. Republicans and conservatives, they formed think tanks. No. You got to leave the think tank, shut it down, and you have to go to the universities, and you have to be a counterbalance on their faculties in the history department, in the English department, in this all the sciences. You have to get back into the university. Trump, if he wanted to do anything, should actually do something about how universities get funded, and they should have ideological litmus tests so that if you have an overwhelming amount of, let's say, leftists in your history department, you're going to have to be required to not hire half of them, and you're going to have to hire ideologically different people so that you have an ideologically diverse department. Here, I'm going to show it to you so you could hear it from their own mouth.
I think that tactically it makes absolute sense to use the university in every way, shape, and form that we can to advance our cause. We can use it as a kind of Trojan horse, as an organizing site and as a place for political education. It has its limitations like any site, and those we have to be very vigilant about. And so a second tactic that is equally important and isn't mutually exclusive from the first is developing counter-hegemonic institutions of education, meaning platforms that allow us to collectively educate ourselves outside of the confines and restrictions of the university, like the International Manifesto Group, like what I've been doing with a number of fellow intellectuals and activists in the critical theory workshop, and many other platforms that we can point to. These tactics, though, if it be a kind of Trojan horse use of the academy as much as we can, counter-hegemonic educational and political platforms need ultimately to be linked to an overall strategy. We're not going to be able to have the educational forms that we need if we are either only working, with and against the university, and or developing alternative platforms that always need to survive on a shoestring budget, that are often attacked, that don't have the power and the resources that the ruling class has. The horizon of our struggle needs to be that we need to go in a socialist direction so that ultimately we can develop a socialist intellectual apparatus like the one they have in Cuba that they're trying to destroy, or in China, or in other examples that we could point to, because then we'll have the real state power necessary to fully educate the people, because the tools of education will be in the people's hands. And so I'll conclude by saying, two tactics and one strategy. I'm sure there are other tactics that people could add, but that we need to think about this in terms of the short, medium, and long-term struggle. Thank you.
Let me blow up that stupidity. All right. There's too much to go into really on there, but let me blow up a little bit of that stupidity. Okay. He doesn't give a crap about the people, that guy. Because guess what? What happens? Because what he thinks of the people? Ask him what he thinks of people who live in what they call flyover country. Ask him what he thinks of the average abuela, Hispanic grandmother that came across the border, who's here legally, who goes to church every Sunday. He's not interested in empowering people. He's interested in socialism, because we've seen from the socialists, and we mentioned their murders just a half hour ago. Who did they murder? They murdered the people that didn't go along with the revolution. That guy's not interested in educating anybody. He's interested in re-educating people. That's what he wants. He wants government total control. He said it. Socialized education, collective thinking. He's not interested in independent inquiry or academia, so to speak. He's interested in imposing a worldview on other people's kids. And you know what happens when you don't go along with the worldview? Siberia. Or like Castro did, he'll just put you in jail, like the Khmer Rouge did. The Khmer Rouge, Pol Pot, when he realized that he couldn't re-educate the population, he killed 4 million of his own people. You know why he's the world heavyweight champion? More than Mao, more than Stalin? Because he killed 40% of the population. That's what the killing fields were. You see that guy? He looks good, right? He's manicured, right? I probably pedicured too. He should go ask Yuval Harari for a date, okay? Because he's obviously a homosexual. See, that guy is as vicious a brutal murderer as anybody I just mentioned, as anybody in human history. But he says, we really need to educate the people. You're not interested in education. You're interested in re-education. That guy and people like him, that guy is the problem in the world, Joe Rossinello.
Couple comments. He gets it because he teaches at a Catholic university, by the way, Villanova University.
That guy's at Villanova?
Yes.
See,
Gabriel Roscoe teaches
off,
at Villanova University that costs roughly about $90,000 US a year. He gets it because Villanova is an elite university. And what that man is doing, and he is not alone, he is manipulating young, gifted minds who then go out into the world and not only destroy themselves, but they destroy others. He teaches at a Catholic university, and I am Catholic, and this is the warning, and that's why this is an important clip. Be very mindful what you give your money to, Be very mindful that where you send your children to school, because that man is a predator. As many universities, and there are many Catholic universities where they have many people like that employed, and or Ivy League universities where you send your gifted daughter or son and they come back brainwashed. And that is what happened to Barack Obama. That is what happened to the mayor of New York City. Gifted men. Speaking specifically about Barack Obama, he came from a broken home. He wasn't grounded in anything substantive. He goes to Columbia University and he encounters people like that. And what happens? They sell him a bill of goods and he becomes a true believer. And that becomes their religion. And they destroy themselves and they destroy others because they are smart and they get big jobs and they have power. And that was a strategy of the secular humanists, of the radical left. And they took over the American universities. They took over the Canadian universities. And that's what you get. And that is the parent who broke their ass to send their kid to school. That is who your kid is sitting in front of.
Listen, we had friends in Jersey. Okay, we used to get together with them. We hadn't seen them in a while. When we first got to Arizona, we went back after that first year to go visit a few people, and we visited those friends. And their daughter, one of their daughters, was just getting back from freshman year in college, right? And they were telling us, now we had met the girl, very nice girl, before she went to school. We met her after the first year. They told us she flat out calls them racist. Like she says to her parents, you're racist. You voted for Trump, so you're a racist, blah, blah, blah. It's like, see that guy, Joe, we don't bash the bishops here.
How does he have a job? He should be fired.
The bishops of the Catholic Church, I'm sorry, I mentioned Bella Dodd earlier, and you want to know what? I don't care what Father Imperato says. I love Father Imperato, but Father Imperato thinks that you can't point the finger and be critical. He says, well, who are you? No, I am a lay person who knows the faith, Father. Okay, and this is not directed at Father Steve because he's an awesome guy, okay? He's one of our heroes for the way things he's done. But my point is this, but Father seems to think that we can't question these men, that we can't say or write a letter to the Pope and say, Papa, the bishop who oversees Villanova University is allowing a person like this to teach at a Catholic institution, Papa. This is not supposed to be allowed. This is a Catholic school. Let him go to the public school. Let him go to Rutgers. Let him go to Penn State. Let him go somewhere else. Okay? Catholic bishops. And look, by the way, as a little aside, did you see what happens when you push back a little? What happened at Notre Dame a couple weeks ago? Joe?
Oh, yeah, I heard that they backed down on that situation.
They backed down. Now, they didn't back down.
Was the alumni.
They made the phone call to her. They made the phone call say, you're going to have to bow out of this gracefully because there's no way. But it shows you when you push back against the bishops, when you can push back a little bit, when you know they're doing things that are wrong. That man has no business at a Catholic institution.
100%. But here's the thing. A lot of parents send their kids to these schools, Catholic schools, and frankly, not only are they getting brainwashed, but it's not an authentically Catholic school. Now, I'm not saying that Villanova is not a Catholic school. Don't twist my words. But what I'm saying is authentically Catholic schools, i.e. the schools on the Newman list. For those who don't know what that is, look it up. Newman list in America. They would never hire that man.
Never.
And because you have a responsibility to the parents who are spending a lot of money educating their children for you. You're giving them, there's a great responsibility there. You see, why would you send your kid there if you're Catholic? And that is a larger question. Do we even know what it means to be Catholic anymore? Because that ideology is as anti-Catholic as it gets.
Yeah.
That ideology is anti-America. And America is not a Catholic nation, never was, and probably never will be. So this is the problem. They know what they're doing. He's just telling you They know what they're doing, and they've succeeded. Overwhelmingly have they succeeded.
They know
And
they
that
have.
is why America and Canada is the way it is.
Right. And well, hopefully Joe and I will have our little 2 cents to throw in all the time and do our part and try to rally some voices and raise the consciousness of people out there to understand what's going on. We're going to do our best. We're going to show up. We ask everybody to share these interviews, share them around. We're posting clips from them if you want to post shorter clips. So a lot of clips go on Facebook, YouTube, X. So help us out. We know we always appreciate your support. Antonella and Teflon and Wild Child, caro bene, Joe, caro bene. He's causing trouble today in the chat room. Going to go find Bobby and go straighten him out a little bit. But all you guys, thank you so much. We love you to death. So we'll see you next week, probably on Sunday. I got a little jammed up yesterday, so I couldn't go on. But nonetheless, we're going to keep having these conversations. See you next time. And remember, until then, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk